Hello everyone, today we are exploring how short-form video platforms like TikTok are transforming news consumption among young audience. As more Gen Z users turn to social media for news, questions around credibility and the future of journalism are becoming increasingly important. In this interview, I speak with Dekan Apajee, Head of Department in Media, and Naida Redgrave, Course Leader of Journalism, to understand how this shift are reshaping the industry. Hello Dekan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm currently working on a feature exploring how short-form video platforms like TikTok are transforming news consumption among young audience. And I'm particularly interested in your perspective given your role as head of department in media and your work in journalism and media literacy. Hi Dekan, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for removing time. So first, I would really love to ask you, how is TikTok changing the way young audience engage with news?
I would ask you first, what do you mean by young audience?
So among the Gen Zs, around the age of 18 to 24.
18 to 24. Well, I think they're an interesting age. I don't know if it's changing them very much. I think TikTok, along with other social media platforms, has just changed how we consume anything more often. It's obviously it's a short form platform that requires that creates content in very short bite-sized pieces, which is what everyone seems to want these days. It's in a way it can make news consumption easier rather than having lots of long news stories that last 2, 3, 4 minutes on a traditional news platform. So it makes news, it makes it more concise, it helps us kind of understand quite complicated things in a very short space. So in one way, that's why there's been an increase in its consumption. I think the other thing is that how we consume our content, the fact that we use our phones and smartphones, tablets, etc., we carry those around with us much more than sitting in front of a TV screen. Before you used to sit there and you had to watch it, but now we have devices that we can carry around with us all over the place and take it. So that's kind of TikTok has played into that. So it's on a device that you can carry around with you whenever you want, wherever you want to go. That's meant that people are consuming it. Has it changed consumption? It's just a different way of consuming it. It's the way that I know a younger generation, when I talk about young people, so the younger generation, even younger than the 18-year-olds, the 12 to 15-year-olds age group, consumes news predominantly because of that kind of short format, because of the fact that you can access it wherever you are. You don't have to stop and watch it. You can watch it while you're on a train, on a bus,
while you're traveling,
which is how lots of people consume content these days anyway, while they're doing something else, and particularly younger generations. Older generations very much sit down, watch something, even though that's changing as well. But young generations very much, I'm making food, I'm going to have my social feed going, I can just flick through it, or I'm watching a film and I'm flicking through it. This idea of having multiple devices going at the same time. I think so. In that regard, it's something that has become or made news much more accessible. And then also, I guess how it's delivered as well leads to its accessibility. Not just the kind of functionality of it carrying it, but the fact that it's often led by an individual. It's very personable. It's talking to camera, which is what people like. Really resonates with people, which attracts people into that space, really engaging. So that kind of content. It's also visual as well. So it's like little clips of stuff that are happening all the time, and text as well. So it just speaks to lots of different attributes, I guess, that we what's the word I'm looking for? That we engage with. It just makes it much more engaging in content. And the research shows us that the research this year, I don't know if you've looked at the news consumption report from Ofcom.
The statistics have been up comparative to last year. I have done the statistics for it.
Yeah, it's been on growth for the last kind of 5-6 years.
Yeah.
You can see that.
So just with that only, do you think short video platforms are affecting attention spans or simply reflecting existing habits? Are they changing our real habits?
They are. I think they're changing habits. They're changing. They're making us They're making us less patient. And this started even before the platforms really took a hold. But this, for me, it started with 24-hour news, having news consistently on all the time. When news doesn't happen all the time, right? News happens, something happens, event happens, you report it, and then it takes a bit of time before something else happens. So say there was a car accident at the front of the university. That happens now, and then in 2 minutes' time, not much is going to change. Maybe in 5 minutes' time, maybe the police might arrive or an ambulance might arrive to take, if someone's injured, to take them away. And then in an hour's time, nothing's going to really change, possibly, in that situation. But we have 24 hours news that's constantly kind of reporting every minute of the situation. So minute 1, the accident. Minute 2, the accident. Minute 3, the accident, and maybe there's somebody there that saw the accident. Minute 4, somebody that saw the accident, and repeat that there was an accident. And we've kept that going. So we've created this space where we're constantly kind of wanting to kind of see what's going on. And I think the social media platforms and TikTok have played into that in terms of generating content or having content that people can just see all the time, and you're just consuming it. So it's kind of a more, well, they haven't created it, they've leaned into it, and they've now kind of said that this is a great way for us to kind of get our stuff out there, whatever we're doing. And people's attention spans have been algorithmically changed because the platforms, they're not like TV where you watch something at a set time that's on a TV schedule. They are curated for you. What you see on TikTok is going to be different to what I see on TikTok, because it's looking at your habits, what you do, and it's reinforcing those habits. If you like cake,
so basically it's
like
just
cake,
like more of an AI generated, it's just deciding upon our mood what to show us.
It's an algorithm. It depends on you. If you like cake, for instance, or you like coffee,
it's
all
just
of your
gonna
stuff
show
is just
me
going to be cake and coffee. So any news about cake and coffee, if I like birds and
nature,
windows and stuff, it's going to just show me that all, and that's what happens. So then it makes me feel, oh, I'm getting it. And then it just, the shortness of it, the type of content, whether that's funny or informative or emotional or whatever it is, that just keeps kind of building. The algorithm starts to learn what it is, or thinks it learns what I'm doing, because I stop, I hover over something, I look at something briefly, I might read it, and then it just kind of reinforces that. So it's definitely creating a habit in you, because it kind of wants you to stay in that space. It wants you to stay in that, on your social feed, looking at all of this content, because that's what kind of helps it generate its revenue, because it then generates it through advertising and stuff, because it keeps you in that space and gathers all your information, gathers your data.
Okay, so I'll just go a bit forward.
Yeah.
So do you know what are the biggest risks of misinformation on the short form video platforms?
Yeah, one of them is the misinformation. It's around credibility and accuracy. As I said before, we used to have a certain number of channels that delivered news, and you can more or less trust them. The BBC channel for ITV, Sky, and we've got other channels, Al Jazeera, CNN and stuff like that all produce news and are known for their news content. But now on social media, what you have is, it's a form of citizen journalism, but with no checks and balances in there. So anybody can choose to be, but then the question is, sometimes those people that have done the research and have read books and done other bits and pieces and just relaying information, but sometimes those people will see something on here and just repeat it for the sake of it, without doing any research, without second sourcing it, without kind of thinking, okay, why is this happening now? What's going on? What's the connection to that thing? And they'll just repeat it, but under the guise of that they're telling news. And that is one of the problems around misinformation, where people just kind of spew out, regurgitate what they've seen without doing their own kind of checks and balances on it, without saying, oh, I've seen this person say this, let me just type that into the internet and see what else is going on, or let me just check the news and see if this thing really did happen. They don't even do that. They just kind of say, yeah, straight away, oh, I've seen this on there. Oh yeah, the sky is pink. Oh, let me quickly, everybody, the sky is pink. The sky. They haven't even looked outside the window to see. But that's what's happening. So there is a sense that things aren't always fact-checked properly. But where is that coming in? So there's a trust there that you have to build. And sometimes people, doesn't matter what you say, what the platforms allow to happen is, even if, just because they like you, oh, you said the sky is pink, I'll believe you. I'm not going to look outside either. You said it's pink, so I just trust what you... And then it just creates this like weird...
loop.
Yeah, this echo chamber where people are just kind of saying the same thing, which hasn't been fact-checked, but then enough of them say it, so then they start to believe it, and then they start to think, oh, this is true, oh, this has happened, the sky is pink.
So currently we were speaking about the trust with the short form video platforms. So I would like to ask you about a question. How reliable is news on TikTok compared to traditional media like Guardian, BBC or Times?
Well, it depends. All those platforms, all those institutes are on TikTok. So if you're going to look at the Guardian's TikTok channel, the BBC's TikTok channel, Al Jazeera's TikTok channel, chances are that the news is real, it's been authenticated, it's been fact checked, it's unbiased, it's impartial, it presents both sides of the story in the way that journalism should. So yeah, you can find good news on it, and even from those from individuals that aren't the kind of the big institutes, you can find some really good information and news information on there. But there's a bigger risk on social media and on TikTok of going down this rabbit hole, because once you see something that says the sky is pink on there, and then you go, if you spend enough time looking at it, the algorithm will present you with more things or more people saying the sky is pink, and then what that will tend to do is then reinforce that message in your head. Oh yeah, the sky is pink, and then there's a problem there, because that's kind of moving down the misinformation and disinformation route. And then there's questions to be asked as to why there is that misinformation. Is it just because somebody got something wrong, which happens to everybody? Even the big news organisations get things wrong, right? Or is there something more purposeful about the reason that they've said the sky is pink? And that's where kind of we get into really kind of interesting conversations about what social media is, how good is it, whether it needs further regulation, because you can say stuff on there, because also there's freedom of expression, right? You can say the sky is pink. I can't stop you from saying that, right? So,
yeah.
And that's the thing, right? I can't stop you from saying those things, especially if it's not particularly harmful. You say the sky is pink. If you want to believe the sky is pink, that's up to you. You might love the colour pink, and that might be, the sky is always pink. But to others, that might be harmful, because people might be vulnerable to that, vulnerable to kind of hearing things and messages, and easily manipulated to think, oh, you're saying the sky is pink today, and if you said, oh yeah, and then there's £100,000 on the floor downstairs, if you jump out the window, you can get £100,000. That same person might think, okay, I'm going to go and do that, and that obviously is not right. That's wrong. There's offence there. There's a real kind of grey areas around trust and what the platforms can do, how they do it, and whether they can be as good, as reliable, as credible. They can be, but we have to kind of be, I guess, journalistic in our approach to the platforms. We have to kind of take that, whereas if like think about the where, what, why, when, hows of that. That's how we have to think when we're dealing with platforms, I think.
So the last question I would really ask, it's a quick question.
Yeah.
So according to you, what would you choose? Like the 1 minute video on a short form video platform, like about the news, or the whole news story in the news channel?
Well, I would choose both if I can. The reason being, because the short form I think is great. As I said, it takes sometimes a very complex story with lots of different things going around in it, and condenses it into a format, a duration that I can watch and I can consume, and I can think, okay, that's really interesting. But then I need the in-depth stuff as well, because if it is a subject that I'm interested in, if I want to find out more, where do I go to get that? It can't all rely on short form, because it won't deliver.
It won't give you more information on that.
And I need that credibility, and I need that authenticity and accuracy within that news report. So then I will need to go to a longer form piece, whether that is from one of the main broadcasters or news outlets, or somebody on TikTok. You can do like longer videos and other bits and pieces. But yeah, the idea of short form is good. But I've noticed on there, maybe it's just my feed, that when it comes to news content, because some of the stuff I consume, I'm often getting longer form stuff on my news content. I'm not getting like the 20-second news clips so much. I'm getting content that is at least a minute and a half long on there. So maybe it's learning that I want slightly longer news. I'm interested in some of the short stuff to kind of spark my interest and tell me things that I didn't know, because there's loads of news happening all the time, and there's things that I didn't know happened. And that for me is just to consume little bits is good. But yeah, I need the longer stuff to make sure I understand that it's real and understand all of what's going on. But then that just might be me because of my journalistic background, that I need that. But I do think that's something that everybody, particularly people that consume and use social media and TikTok, they need to develop that skill of looking around and not just staying in that narrow lane and being blinded, but they need to kind of look around the whole. They've seen a story, okay, who else is saying that? Where else are they saying that?
Okay.
Cool.
That's really nice. It was really nice talking to you, sir.
No, you too.
And I really appreciate for you removing your time. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Hello, Professor Naida. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I've been speaking to academics about how short-form video platforms like TikTok are influencing news consumption, and I'm really keen to explore how this is impacting journalism education from your perspective. So firstly, I would like to start with how has TikTok influenced the way journalists produced and present news?
So that's quite a big question. I'd say in a lot of ways, just the short form, so the shortness of TikTok has changed how people's attention span is. So I think when looking at how it influences how we produce news on those platforms, obviously you're shaping the news to grab the attention of your audience rather than shaping the news really thinking about the depth of the story, I would say.
So looking further to that, are journalists now expected to act as a content creator as well as a reporter?
That's a really interesting question. I would say that journalists are expected to understand that reaching audiences now isn't the sole or isn't just attached to working for a broadcaster. Every journalist is effectively an independent body themselves, and that can be a good and a bad thing, because for somebody who wants to be a freelancer and develop their own brand, that's a great thing to have that autonomy. However, for somebody who potentially wants to follow a more traditional path, not having a knowledge of these platforms is really limiting to a career.
Like mostly of the content creators I have seen, they just like copy paste someone's the content and they just reframe everything and they just like paste in their contenting
And
about the news.
yeah, and I suppose the question then becomes, if you are leaning more towards content creation rather than journalism, are you actually a journalist anymore? Like, are you sourcing news stories for yourself, or like you say, are you just copy and pasting? I would say that content creation and journalism are two separate things, but to be a journalist, you've got to be aware of content creation and how to achieve it.
Okay, that's nice. How are news organizations adapting their strategies to fit for short form videos?
So I think that over time, news agencies have become aware that they can't ignore it. So they've got to have a presence on TikTok. For something, or for an organisation like The Guardian, let's say, it means they've really had to tailor to a different type of audience, and many ways having to shorten their content to fit in with the style of the platform, which has pros and cons. The pros are that they're probably reaching wider and younger audiences, but the cons are, can you ever really fully tell a story in that short space of time?
So, like, can serious or complex news stories be effectively told in under a minute? If there is any serious crime story, or like some related, like a bit in BBC's, how we see on today's social media platforms, some crime stories, something happened on the road, there has been police and everything. Can it just said it under a minute?
I personally, and I'm going to tread carefully here, I personally do not feel that a story can be done justice in a minute. However, I think there are huge benefits to having that as the gateway. So if you are being introduced to a story through 1 minute of content, and then that makes you go and look further and read further, then that's fantastic because it's drawing an audience in. But if somebody is only consuming their news via 1 minute stories, I would argue that no, they're not getting the full picture in that minute.
So I would like to ask you something related traditional journalists. So do platforms like TikTok challenge traditional journalistic ethics?
I think yes, I think they do challenge traditional ethics, because I think the temptation to cut corners is inherent in the platform and the length of the content. So if we're thinking of ethics in terms of lack of depth, then I think potentially yes. I wouldn't say that all news items that are shared through TikTok are unethical. I just think that it does encourage cutting corners.
So I would just like to ask you a few more questions related to the educational side of journalism. So how are journalism courses adapting to the platforms like TikTok, Twitter, Instagram?
So I think they present a really exciting angle for us to teach journalism. I think that whilst maybe some of my previous answers might sound a bit more negative towards those platforms, I think as tools for teaching students how to tell stories, they're really exciting, because it's actually in many ways a lot easier to tell a longer story than it is to say to a student, right, no, you don't have 1,000 words now you've got a minute and you need to decide what are the key most important parts of this story. So when you're learning storytelling, having a tool like that is really, really useful. I also think that in terms of being connected to the modern world, we would be doing a disservice to students if we just ignored those platforms. So I think those platforms are absolutely useful as educational tools. I think they're really important for students to understand. I think it's just about making sure students understand the pros and cons of those platforms when telling news stories.
So I would like to ask you, like, would these platforms, like short video platforms, take over the traditional platforms which were like there, like television, newspapers, news stories? Would it just take over them in future?
In some ways, I think it already has. I think if you were to ask certain demographics, maybe 25 to 35 year olds, where they get their news from, I would be very surprised if everybody responded newspapers. So it's been a slow but steady evolution away from traditional media and towards these platforms. I think the ideal would be not to have them completely replace everything, but just be a part of it. But absolutely, I think it's already happening.
Okay, I would just lastly to ask you, what does the future of news consumption look like for the young audience?
I think the short form content trend is here to stay. I think a lot of the time we find things go in cycles. So we'll have, right now TikTok seems to be a very, very popular platform. I would hazard a guess in 3 years' time there will be a different platform which is doing something slightly differently. I would like to think that there is still a place for traditional news media, and I think there always will be. It's exciting and potentially a little bit daunting when we think about AI and the idea of not being able to necessarily verify whether something is real or fake. So the idea of deep fakes, and I think that probably is more concerning than the platforms themselves. It's whether the influence of AI is going to change the shape of whether we can trust what we're seeing.
So lastly, I just want to ask you a one sentence question. That's what would you trust between, would you trust the short form video platforms or the actual news on the television?
I want to say news on the television. I think I'm showing my age a bit, but I still probably trust news on the television over short form platforms at the moment, but we'll see. Ask me again in 1 year's time.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. I appreciate that you have removed your time. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
This marks the end of the feature exploring the impact of short form video platforms like TikTok on news consumption among young audience. Thank you so much for listening me today.